People who work in bars, what's the most NSFW thing you've seen? Story 1. I worked at a 4 a.m. bar next to Wrigley Field in Chicago. It was about 3:30 a.m. and it was just me and a bouncer left at the bar when a bachelor party walks in. After they order a round, two of them start shouting at each other and it escalated to a fight. One dude ripped the ear off the other's head and then tossed it onto the bar. I stood there staring at it for a moment before I realized what I was looking at. We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description. Story 2. Way back in the day, I used to work in a club in Edinburgh. In some ways, it's still the best/worst job I've ever had. It was a really grim, nasty, rundown crap hole that attracted a clientele of students, schemies, Neds, and general alcoholic scum. My top 4 favorite moments in reverse order are the times the manager would screw off somewhere and leave the club in the hands of the 21-year-old assistant manager who would immediately start offering free drinks to girls who'd strip on the dance floor. The time the plumbing went and sewage flooded the club in the middle of the night, but half the club simply refused to leave and were still drinking while piss and crap sloshed around them. The DJ eventually started playing the theme from Titanic. The time a Yank wearing a bright purple catsuit got hammered on 2 pints of Tennent's and started groping men on the toilets. He got away with it until he tried it on with one of the door, which was not a smart thing to do with a 6'4" Scottish squatty/part-time doorman. And finally, the time a doorman caught a guy jerking it in a toilet cubicle, put him in a full Nelson headlock and marched him through the club with his trousers still around his ankles and his dong out, and threw him out on the street outside. Sadly, the guy had already nut all over the toilet door and some poor guy had to wipe it up. Story 3. Nightclub in the UK. The worst was a woman bent on the bar being doggy-styled by a man who was also reaching around her front. They both didn't acknowledge my presence or my gesturing to stop. A man tried to pay for his drinks with Coke and then did lines on the bar. When being escorted out, he tried to bribe the bouncers to not hand him over to the police using the aforementioned Coke. A hen knight from the valleys got into a drunken screaming and slapping debacle with a presumed mother-in-law screaming for her daughter to rip a third party's head off. Lots of vom, just so much. And finally, the scariest was watching a man put something in another man's drink. I threw the contaminated drink in his face, which obviously upset him, but he left when I challenged him to go to my manager, and before the bouncers could manage to get over. My manager was upset, but I hadn't had training on what to do in that situation. Story 4. My friend now owns a bar, but has worked as a bartender for over a decade. His 2 favorite stories to tell are, one time, he caught one of the patrons out back getting a job done behind the dumpster. He got everyone at the bar and a few tables to come out back and start clapping for him for the achievement of the situation. The other was when they caught one of the owners cheating on his wife with a waitress upstairs in the manager's room. They nicknamed the waitress's favorite drink the Homewrecker, red wine plus Red Bull, and watched his wife come in, catch onto the joke as she had her suspicions, then proceeded to take him for everything. Story 5. I was bartending at a pub in central London. 2 guys came in on a Friday after work and one of them was pounding Baileys on the rocks. He had a ton of them, went to the bathroom and threw it all up across the entire bathroom. It was a vile mixture of vom and sugary sweet Baileys. Thank God I didn't have to clean it up. Story 6. I was bartending when a local dealer came in with his craziest side chick. About an hour later, his craziest baby mama comes in and starts arguing with the side chick. This happens pretty often. After a few minutes of that, baby mama walks up to the bar and I get her a drink. Out of nowhere, the side chick screams, "That's why your baby daddy banged me in the butt last night." Whole bar erupts with laughter. Baby mama then launched a rocks glass at side chick's head. It frickin' explodes, glass and blood everywhere. Bar erupts with laughter again. 13 stitches later, they're best friends. Maybe I'm just too spiteful or vengeful of a person, but I feel like I could never just be friends with someone like that. I don't get how these people do it. Story 7. I assume you're mostly going to get weird banging stories. Anyway, here's a more benign/amusing one. I was a dishwasher in high school at a restaurant that turned into a bar at night. I was usually gone by the time it turned into a bar. Anyway, I walked into the kitchen after close one night for some reason, only to find 3 dudes I've never met before turning a potato into a bowl for smoking weed. They saw me, dropped the potato, and ran. They thought I was a cop. Crew cut, shaved face, and in good shape at the time. I had no clue what they were doing, so the bartender had to explain to me and the patrons what was going on. We all had a good laugh. Story 8. Once witnessed a girl sitting on a guy's lap. She was bouncing up and down. Quite obviously, they were banging. So I called security over and she jumped off. 2 security guards asked him to leave and he wouldn't go. So each security guard grabbed an arm and escorted him out. Little did they know, his thing was still raging hard and out of his fly. Took him outside of the club where 50 people were lining up to get in. Everyone started laughing and the guy was loving it. TLDR, man was escorted out dong first in front of loads of people. Story 9. Worked on weekends when in leave, Army. Many guys from my unit frequented the place as it was 5 blocks from it, and the owner was a former commander of the unit. One time, 5 guys tried a smash and grab on the place, not knowing that almost everyone in there was strapped or could snap their necks. 2 of them died when the shooting broke out, and 1 got its ding-dong shot off, while the other 2 got restrained and handed over to the police. Next weekend was business as usual, and in honor of that pecker blown off, there was a plaque outside with a cut of the newspaper, something along the lines of, "Local man shoots dong off thug." Story 10. Whilst working at a hotel, we had a function on, and a lot of the 400 guests were already pretty buzzed when they got there. Outside, there was a group of girls. As I'm walking down the line to see how many people there are, she's laughing with her mates about the piercing she just got. She proceeds to lift her skirt up in full view of me and shows her pantyless, bare kitty to her friends, and they all giggle about it. I looked away as soon as I realized what was happening and went about my business. To be fair to her, though, it looked lovely. Story 11. Years ago, I worked in what was considered a relatively high-end hotel. There were 2 front bars as well as function rooms, so we got many groups in. A car rally crowd one weekend took over one of the bars and the drinking started. One guy bets another that he can't stand on his head and drink a pint. The guy takes the bet and cleverly uses a pillar to balance himself, ending up upside down, with his feet up against it and supporting himself with his hands. He proceeds to start to drink a pint, meaning only one hand free to support himself. The other guy walked over, opened the drinker's trousers, and pulled his pants to his ankles. This poor guy is left there with his tiny dong and balls exposed. The next year, same crowd, same bar, very drunk and 100% naked for a laugh. Another night saw my ex-girlfriend's mother, a really beautiful woman, in a drunken group wanking off a stranger for a laugh. Was propositioned by a couple who wanted someone to watch them that evening. I was a kid and it was beyond my capabilities. Finally, a night porter who is a bit older than my young years asking me to deliver a drinks order to a room, to find him pulling the dong off himself watching adult videos. Story 12. Not necessarily seen, but I'm 100% sure what was going on. Went to a bar in Mexico and decided to buy myself a beer for the first time legally at a bar. Mind you all, I was born and raised here in the US. Legal drinking age is 21, but in Mexico it's 18. I was 19, so why not? Anyway, I saw plenty of older women and they started approaching me left and right. Weird, but I just chatted. And all of a sudden I hear a man and woman moaning. I knew exactly what was going on. I guess that place was a solicitation house. Anyway, I just kept drinking, chatting, and left. Not bad, would go back. Story 13. I worked a short stint at a bar back at this decent local place that everyone in the nearby counties would flock to because it was just the cool place to be. One night was particularly crowded. A famous guy was staying in town and was there every night from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. with some unknowns like clockwork. Word got around, so business got really heavy during those hours. The celeb was very personable and charismatic, convinced people to buy more and more drinks and to tip the servers and bartenders well, which was very much so appreciated. But every night was like a big party for those few weeks. One of those nights, I walked into the men's bathroom and saw this very elderly woman in a pantsuit looking like Hillary Clinton's mother sitting on the toilet. Crap smeared on the wall just behind her head as she's leaned into it with her big updo hair, as she's servicing some barely 21-year-old guy very enthusiastically. All the while, the stall door is open and families were in the restaurant part eating and children could easily just walk in. It was not that kind of place. There was no sleaziness. The customers were your average people that just wanted to eat and have drinks, but the celeb's presence changed things for those weeks. The elderly woman looked at me and smiled, still servicing this guy with her head being cushioned by the crap pillow on the wall until I yelled, "What the frick are you doing?" and scared the crap out of both of them. Dude zipped himself up. The 75-plus-year-old woman buttoned the top of her pantsuit, and dude left immediately without paying his bill while the woman went back to her table in the cocktail area, with her family, crap still in her hair. I stopped working there less than a week later, but it was the other story that I won't tell that was the straw that broke the camel's back. How dare this guy mention a story that made him quit and then refuse to tell it? So rude. Story 14. I've seen women in extremely short dresses doing energetic dances, and you can clearly see that they're not wearing underwear. Just last week, a very attractive woman was talking to me while I was DJing. Later on, she was with her boyfriend at a table. He flipped her on the table and lifted up her dress way past her waist, and you could see her black thong. She was laughing about it, but the rest of the night, I found it hard to look at this woman not thinking about her underwear. One club in London I worked at years ago, the club doesn't exist anymore, it was common to see a guy giving it to some girls behind the dumpster. Story 15. Used to work in one that did a carvey on Sunday. We often got a lot of traveler families in. They would come in large families, make a fuss and mess. Certainly not every traveler family, but I can hand on heart say this was more common than not. Eat all their meals and then complain about finding a hair at the end and kick up a fuss refusing to pay or demanding half price. One particular day, the manager grew a pair and refused to give it to them for free or offer a discount as it was now so common. They kicked up a racket and one of the women went to the bar area near the exit, lifted her skirt, and crapped on the floor in front of everyone. Story 16. A friend of mine used to work at an almost man club, where there are no dancers, but there are girls to pick up with. One night he asked me to help him and I accepted because of the extra money. The manager arrived drunk AF and started giving free shots to all the girls. There was a big boy from a cartel who took like 6 free shots as well. Mexico, what can you expect? Like at 3 a.m. arrived with 6 to 7 explorers with a lot of narcos. They closed up the bar for themselves and gave us 4,000 Mexican pesos, the entire QT to pay a monthly rent. I saw drugs, weapons, and a lot of girls topless, and more money than expected. It was awesome. Story 17. Everyone has seen the fights and banging. One of the funniest things ever were when some police and bounty hunters were chasing a guy around the bar. The bar I worked at was right on a lake and had a nice beer garden outside overlooking it. A pretty popular place for an urban environment. Of course, the patrons were more than willing to help out these peace officers. For those who don't know about bounty hunters in America, they are a real thing and not just an Old West oddity. They hunt people who violate their bail bonds by missing court dates. Normally employed by the bondsman, they get paid a fee for retrieving the fugitive, and turning them in so the bondsman can get their money back that they put up to allow the person to get out of jail. Bounty hunters have special abilities that police don't when pursuing fugitives. One is that they don't need a warrant to enter a property to look for a fugitive, and they can even detain people who try to prevent this. Something police need a judge to sign off on a warrant to do unless they see the fugitive enter. So the bar patrons were adamant the guy was hiding under the boat dock. They made a good case, and the 2 bounty hunters stripped down to their underwear and got into the water and began searching under the dock. Of course, he wasn't there. They were less willing to believe them when they insisted that he was in the dumpster. I wouldn't let them behind my bar, but told them that they could look over the top to make sure he wasn't hiding behind it. I never let anyone behind my bar. They looked like they wanted to challenge me on it, but decided to just look over the top and they could see into the back room. So after a quick walkthrough of the bar, they eventually then moved on to the apartments south of the lake. A few minutes after they were gone, I went into the cooler to change a keg, and there's this skinny guy standing there, soaking wet and shivering. I just shook my head and told him that they went south. He smiled and took off in the other direction. They eventually caught him a few weeks later, and he was convicted of his marijuana possession with intent to sell charge. About a year later, when he got out of jail, he came back for a beer and we all had a good laugh about it. Hard to believe that entire drama was about something completely legal here now. Yeah, well, that's what happens when they classify something as extremely dangerous when it's not. I still don't understand that one, to be honest. Maybe I'm just young. I don't know. Story 18. I was a manager of a strip club for a while. We had a new girl that started working for us that was a little dirty. She was smoking hot and resembled Mila Kunis. She banged a customer in the private dance seats out in the open. I heard the scream of another stripper and looked over to see the dong slide out of her. No rubber, and the dude was a fat slob. The other stripper promptly started beating the crap out of her, calling her a harlot, while my bartender was throwing ice at her. Another time. This guy was around 24 years old. He came in often but was out of town for a few months. Most likely dealing or transporting drugs. He came back and was super excited to see me and his friends and stuff and telling me about his trip. Later on in the night, he was gurgling blood in the parking lot after getting shot in a dispute. Story 19. Was tending a bar in college, close to closing time, and we're about to stop serving food. Drunk guy came in and asked for wings. Not hard for the kitchen, and he clearly needed some food, so no problem. Wings and a water it is. I set his food down and go about cleaning up. When I look back, he's got that sick look on his face. Dude proceeds to vom. Not a crazy amount, but enough to cover his plate, and cause him to start choke swallow a bunch more. Didn't even faze him. He just kept eating his wings and dipping them back into the sauce and puke mix as he went. That sticks with me decades later. Story 20. Worked as a bartender for a couple years in popular metro area bar. We had 2 young, very attractive waitresses. Important to preface that one was very confident, even arrogant, and the other was very insecure, meek even. After bar closed, we're splitting tip money, and waitresses somehow get on topic of comparing breasts, and insecure blonde doesn't like her smallish breasts. The confident Italian loved her own and proclaims the blonde has nice ones as well. The head bouncer jumps in and suggests, how about a side-by-side comparison? They both go topless and head bouncer shamelessly snaps a picture with his phone. The Italian waitress has the best pair I've ever seen to this day. Story 21. I worked on the doors in a few clubs and bars. Worst one for just being disgusting was when a woman who was a regular had too many Jaeger bombs. Apparently, Jaeger has an ingredient that can act as a laxative when you've had too much, and she reached her limit. Her friends found her passed out in a cubicle all around her, the floor, the back wall, and all over the toilet.